It is the most popular drink on earth after plain water. Billions of cups are poured every single day in almost every country in the world. It seems gentle, calming, harmless, the very picture of quiet comfort. But this humble drink has a past soaked in blood. Tea toppled emperors and built the richest company the world had ever seen. It addicted an entire nation to a drug and then went to war to keep selling it. It was smuggled, stolen, and fought over. A single tax on it helped spark a revolution that created the United States of America. And behind the delicate cups and the polite rituals lies a story of espionage, empire, and human suffering on a staggering scale. For most of its history, tea was more than a beverage. It was medicine, money, and power. It was carried in bricks like currency, sipped by monks to touch the divine, and hoarded by kings. And to feed the world's endless thirst for it, entire mountainsides were seized, whole populations were put to work, and an ancient civilization was brought to its knees. The story of tea is the story of how a single leaf reshaped the modern world, through trade, through addiction, and through war. This is the hidden history of tea, where it truly came from, the empires that fought over it, the drug that paid for it, and the revolution it helped to ignite. And almost none of it is on the box. Our story begins nearly 5,000 years ago in the mist-covered mountains of ancient China. According to legend, the Emperor Shennong, a wise ruler and healer, was boiling a pot of water beneath a wild tree when a few leaves drifted down into the pot. Curious, he tasted the pale golden brew and felt a gentle warmth and clarity spread through him. He had discovered tea. It is only a story, of course, but it points to a real truth. Somewhere in the highlands of southwest China, people discovered that the leaves of one particular evergreen shrub, Camellia sinensis, could be dried, steeped and drunk, and that the drink did something remarkable. It soothed the body, yet sharpened the mind. At first, tea was medicine, brewed to aid digestion and to keep the drinker awake and alert. But slowly, it became something far greater. Buddhist monks drank it to stay focused through long hours of meditation, and tea became bound up with the search for enlightenment itself. By the time of the Tang dynasty, tea had become the national drink of a vast and sophisticated empire. A scholar named Lu Yu wrote an entire book devoted to it, describing how to grow it, prepare it, and appreciate it as an art. Tea houses filled the cities, poets praised it, and the finest leaves became worth a fortune. Tea grew so valuable that it was pressed into solid bricks and used as money, traded across Asia along the same routes as silk. Along the high mountain passes, caravans carried these bricks of tea to Tibet and beyond, exchanging them for horses. And then tea crossed the sea to Japan, where Buddhist monks carried the seeds home. There it was transformed once again, ground into a vivid green powder called matcha, and raised into the slow, meditative ritual of the Japanese tea ceremony, a practice of stillness, respect, and beauty that endures to this day. For centuries, tea remained an Asian treasure unknown to the West. It was woven into philosophy, religion, and daily life across half a continent. But that was about to change. Because on the other side of the world, European ships were beginning to arrive in eastern waters, and they were about to taste something that would change their nations forever. When the first shipments of tea reached Europe in the 1600s, carried by Portuguese and Dutch traders, no one quite knew what to make of it. This strange dried leaf from the East was rare, exotic, and astonishingly expensive. At first, it was a curiosity for the very rich. But everything changed when tea reached England. In 1662, a Portuguese princess named Catherine of Braganza married King Charles II of England, and she brought with her a passion for tea. Almost overnight, tea became the height of fashion at the English court. What the Queen drank, the nobility drank. And what the nobility drank, everyone else desperately wanted to drink too. The English fell for tea harder than any nation on earth. It was sold in coffee houses, then in elegant tea gardens, then in the home. A whole ritual grew up around it. The porcelain pot, the delicate cups, the silver spoons. And crucially, the English learned to take their tea with sugar, much of it grown on the brutal slave plantations of the Caribbean. Two of the world's great colonial commodities, tea and sugar, were now stirred together in the same cup. Demand exploded. Tea went from a luxury of the elite to a comfort of the masses, drunk by dukes and factory workers alike. It became the fuel of a nation, warm, stimulating, and reassuring. But there was a problem, a very large and very expensive problem. All of this tea came from one place, and one place only: China. Every leaf had to be bought from Chinese merchants, and China, proud and self-sufficient, had little interest in European goods in return. There was only one thing the Chinese would accept in exchange for their tea: silver, mountains of it. And so, year after year, vast rivers of silver flowed out of Britain and into China to pay for the nation's growing addiction to tea. It was draining the British treasury dry. The most powerful empire on earth was being bled white by its love of a single leaf. The British desperately needed something else to sell to China, something the Chinese would want as badly as the British wanted tea. And in the poppy fields of India, they found it. At the heart of this story stands one of the most powerful organizations in human history, the British East India Company. It was not merely a business, it was a private empire. It had its own army, larger than that of most nations. It ruled over vast territories. It minted its own money and waged its own wars. And its lifeblood was trade with the East, above all, the trade in tea. The company faced the same crippling problem as Britain itself. It had to pay for Chinese tea in silver, and the silver was running out. So the company devised a solution of breathtaking cynicism. In the territories it controlled across India, the company forced farmers to grow a particular crop on an enormous scale: opium, the dried sap of the poppy refined into a powerful and deeply addictive narcotic. The plan was as simple as it was ruthless. The company would sell Indian opium into China. As more and more Chinese people became addicted, demand would soar. The silver the British had spent on tea would come flooding back to pay for the drug, and the whole ruinous cycle would finally balance. There was only one obstacle. Opium was illegal in China, and the Chinese government wanted nothing to do with it. So the company simply smuggled it in, working through a web of private traders and corrupt officials, keeping its own hands technically clean while the drug poured across the border. It worked with terrible efficiency. Over the following decades, the number of opium addicts in China climbed into the millions. Entire communities were hollowed out. Officials, soldiers, and laborers fell under the drug's grip. Silver that had once flowed into China now began to flow back out, and the balance of trade tipped in Britain's favor at last. A civilization was being poisoned deliberately to pay for Britain's cup of tea. The Chinese authorities watched this catastrophe unfold with growing alarm. Finally, the emperor appointed a determined official to stamp out the trade once and for all. He seized and destroyed thousands of chests of British opium and blockaded the foreign traders. To Britain, this was not a crime being stopped. It was an attack on free trade, and the most powerful navy in the world was about to answer. What followed was one of the most shameful chapters in the history of empire. In the name of the opium trade, Britain went to war with China, not once, but twice. These became known as the Opium Wars, and they were as one-sided as their cause was unjust. Britain's modern warships and cannon were overwhelming. The Chinese forces, brave but outmatched, were shattered. British firepower battered the coast, forced open the ports, and brought the ancient empire to its knees. It was a war fought, quite openly, to force a sovereign nation to keep buying a drug it had begged to be free of. The peace that followed was a humiliation. China was made to pay enormous sums to open its cities to foreign trade and to hand over a small rocky island that would become the British port of Hong Kong. Historians in China still call this the beginning of the century of humiliation, and the wound it left has never fully healed. All of it flowed in the end from the West's insatiable thirst for tea. But even as Britain forced open China with its guns, it was quietly plotting to escape its dependence on Chinese tea altogether. And for that, it turned to theft. The East India Company sent a Scottish botanist named Robert Fortune deep into the forbidden interior of China, disguised in local dress. His mission was industrial espionage on a grand scale. He smuggled out thousands of tea plants and seeds, along with the closely guarded secrets of how tea was grown and processed, and the skilled workers who knew the craft. He carried these stolen treasures to the slopes of British-controlled India, to Assam and Darjeeling, and later to the island of Ceylon. There, on seized land, the British built vast tea plantations of their own, an empire of tea to rival China's. These plantations ran on the backs of laborers, many of them bound by harsh contracts that kept them in crushing poverty, working long days on the steep green hillsides for almost nothing. The gentle drink of the West now had a new and darker source, grown in the colonies under the shadow of empire. Tea had been an ancient Chinese gift to the world. Now it was a weapon, a poison, and a prize, seized and remade by the most powerful empire on earth. While tea was reshaping Asia through war, it was also igniting revolution on the other side of the world. By the 1700s, the American colonies were as devoted to tea as their British rulers. So when the British government, deep in debt, decided to squeeze its colonies with taxes, tea became the perfect target. The colonists were furious. They were being taxed on their beloved tea by a parliament in which they had no voice. No taxation without representation, they cried. And in 1773, a group of colonists in Boston, some disguised as Native Americans, boarded 3 British ships in the harbor and hurled their entire cargo of tea into the sea. The Boston Tea Party, as it came to be known, was a direct act of defiance against the Crown. Britain responded with harsh punishments. The colonies erupted in anger, and within a few years the 13 colonies were in open revolt. The United States of America was, in part, born from a quarrel over a cup of tea. Back across the Atlantic, the tea trade was being transformed by speed and industry. Sleek, fast sailing ships called tea clippers raced one another across the oceans, carrying the first tea of the season home to eager buyers, their captains competing for glory and fortune. And as the colonial plantations of India and Ceylon poured out tea by the shipload, the price collapsed. Tea stopped being a luxury and became the everyday drink of ordinary people. Enterprising merchants like Thomas Lipton built empires by selling affordable tea directly to the masses, promising to bring it from the garden to the teapot. Then, in the 20th century, came the invention that would define modern tea, the tea bag. Convenient, cheap and fast, it stripped away the old rituals and turned tea into a quick and simple habit for a busy age. Billions of these little bags now flow through the world every day. In just a few centuries, tea had traveled an extraordinary road, from a sacred medicine sipped by monks to the cause of wars and revolutions, to a humble bag steeping in a mug on a kitchen counter. But the story of tea is not finished, and its final chapter reaches right into the cup in your hands today. Today, tea is everywhere. After water, it is the most consumed drink on the planet, woven so deeply into daily life, that most of us never give it a second thought. It is the quiet ritual of the morning and the comfort at the end of a hard day. It is the ceremony that welcomes a guest across much of Asia, the sweet spiced chai of India, the mint tea of North Africa, the strong builder's brew of Britain, the delicate ceremonies of Japan and China. No single drink connects more of humanity, and yet the shadows of its history have never fully lifted. Much of the world's tea is still grown on plantations that descend directly from the colonial estates of the 19th century. And on many of them, the workers who pick the leaves, often women, still labor long hours for very low pay, living in poverty on the same hillsides their ancestors were brought to generations ago. The gap between the price of a picker's day and the price of a fashionable cup in a distant city remains vast. There are efforts to change this through fair trade movements and ethical sourcing, and slowly in places conditions are improving. But the comfortable drink in your cup still carries, in its supply chain, an echo of the empire that built it. And now a new threat has arrived. The tea plant is delicate, and a warming, more unstable climate is disrupting the ancient growing regions, shifting rainfall, spreading pests, and threatening the harvests that billions depend on. So the next time you drop a tea bag into a mug and pour the water and watch it darken, take a moment to consider what you are really holding. Not just a warm and simple drink, but the distilled history of the modern world. A leaf that carried medicine and meditation, that moved silver and horses, that funded empires and financed drug wars, that sparked a revolution and built a nation. It is perhaps the most consequential plant humanity has ever steeped in hot water, a story of beauty and cruelty, of comfort and conquest, all folded quietly into a single leaf. And almost none of it is on the box.